Good morning. Welcome to Freeway Bible Study for today, the 25th day of April, 2018. Oh, hold on. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. Hold on. Let me snap this in. My name is Kurt Bell. I am your host for this project. Some caveats. I'm a non-believer. I enjoy studying the history and the stories within the Bible, but I'm not one to believe the supernatural parts. God, heaven, soul, things like that. And we're off. Here, this is Genesis 37 today. The title of this chapter is Joshua's dream. The coat of many colors. Is it Joshua? I think so. It's one of those, you have like a little moment here, a moment of lapse. Hold on, I gotta make sure it's Joshua. Make sure I'm telling this right. So let me just stop for a second before I get underway. Joseph. Good thing I stopped and checked, not Joshua. Joseph in the coat of many colors. But we're not quite, that's not the focus. The focus is Joseph's dream and what's going to happen to him with his brothers. So now things are the focus of the story is starting to change. We've been focused for a long time on Jacob and his brother Esau, who were the son of Isaac, right? So now their time is nearly past. We're kind of focusing right now on Jacob's line, and in particular his son Joseph. Now remember, Jacob has 12 sons by 2 wives and two of their handmaids. It's a complicated affair. His main wife, Sarah, who died a chapter or so ago, she died in childbirth. She's only had 2 sons. Even though there's 12 sons in his family, only 2 of those are from his main wife. And what I mean by main wife is like his first wife. And no, not really his first wife, because he actually married Leah first. His principal wife, insofar as that he loves her the most because she was the prettiest. That's Sarah. So Sarah's dead, but she had 2 sons. One was Joseph, and the other son, which she had pretty late in life, and her other son is Benjamin, which is the child that she was bearing when she died. So Joseph, he's a young guy. He's still only 17 years old at this time, which is real young in biblical terms, right? He's his father's favorite, and it says that the Bible says so because he was born by Rachel, whom he loved the most. Now remember, he has 11 other sons, and gosh only knows how many daughters. And Joseph is a bit of a, how to use the right word. He rubs his brothers the wrong way. In particular, his brothers spend a lot of their time tending to Jacob's sheep, which are out there. They're living in Hebron now, right, which is where Isaac had been living for a long time, and so that's their home, and Isaac's dead now, and the brothers tend the sheep, and they have to move the sheep around. And we learned that, before I get there, we learned that Joseph has a habit of joining his brothers out in the field, and his brothers are his half-brothers. They're the brothers of Jacob's wives' slave girls. Oh, it's so complicated, isn't it? One of them, his name is Bilhah, and the other is something that starts with a Z. They're the two. So they're not full 100% brothers or half brothers, and everybody knows that their father prefers Joseph the most. All the other brothers know that. So they're on the field. They're my 12 sons. Cue the My Three Sons music, do-do-do-do in the feet, but imagine 12 sets of feet. They're out there in the field, minding the sheep. And Joseph has this bad habit of of snitching on his brothers. If they do something bad out in the fields, or they're not, whatever it is, he tends to go back and tell his dad, back to Jacob. You're not going to believe what the boys are up to. They were. I mean, really get it after you read Genesis 37 several times. You really get kind of a sense that the word I'm after is a pain in the ass. That Joseph's kind of a pain in the ass to his brothers. And his father, loving him as he does, kind of tolerates this. Of course, his mother's not around. Probably Bilhah, or the other one, probably Bilhah, who is his mother's slave girl, has adopted him and is raising him, and may or may not really care. Maybe she's indulging him. He's kind of the favorite. We've seen this before, sometimes with favorites, right? Especially tough when your favorite isn't your firstborn. I think the firstborn is Reuben. And Reuben's going to play a part in this too. So he's kind of making a name for himself as a bit of an ass, telling on his older brothers. But and to make things worse, Jacob, to show his favor for Joseph, has given Joseph a lovely coat of many colors. And I read a little bit about this, and there's some scholarship that shows mid-second millennium paintings on Egyptian tombs that show Semites coming down to Egypt, merchants coming down, and they're wearing long coats, sleeveless coats that go all the way down to below their knees. And that may have been something that they wore, so it may have been a kind of a decorative item. There's also other illustrations that show something similar with patches, So maybe it was kind of like something like that. We always, of course, we picture it as, like a quilt, like a patchwork of many colors. But anyway, so we've got our Western impression of what the coat of many colors is, but it probably was used to symbolize some status or some favor, maybe indicating that he was, perhaps intended by Jacob to become the one who would inherit everything. I don't know how all that worked out, or how it would work out. We know how this does work out, but we don't know how it would have worked out if things hadn't gone south for Joseph. So anyway, he's telling his brothers and all that stuff, and he's got this coat of many colors, and everybody knows that Jacob loves him more than all the other sons, even though he's one of the younger of them all. And so he's not very well liked. So Jacob tells his sons, well, maybe he doesn't tell them, but they're dispatched off from Hebron, where they're living. They're dispatched off to Shechem to go pasture the flocks in Shechem. And it took about 3 or 4 times before reading this chapter before it kind of dawned on me what Shechem was. And then I kind of had a creepy feeling come over me. I was like, ooh, when it dawned on me. Shechem was the name of the son of I think his name was Habor or something like that. I can't quite remember his name. He was the prince of the city or the town where when Jacob first came back to Canaan. Remember, after he'd been laboring so long in Padar Aram, where his uncle lived. He'd been where he got his wives and built his family. Remember, he came all the way back to the land of his father, and King Habor or something, and Prince Habor or something. Shechem was his son, and he was the man who raped Dinah, which is, I believe, I answered the question that I just asked myself earlier about how many daughters he had. We know that Jacob had one daughter. Her name was Dinah, and Shechem raped her. And then remember the whole deal a few chapters back, and then Shechem wanted to marry Dinah. Wow, what an interesting concept. And rape your way into marriage. And then the whole deal with the circumcision, and then when all the men of the Shechemites, I think they were beginning to refer to, had circumcised themselves, and they were laid up after 3 days. The 2 of Jacob's sons grabbed their swords and killed all the menfolk, including the boys, and then took all the women and girls into slavery and made them into part of the household of Jacob. Remember all that? Well, clearly they left that community of Shechem to a wasteland, right? So, and they left the whole thing. And now they're living now over in Hebron, where Isaac had lived. And remember, Esau's moved on. So I mean, gosh, it's complicated. It's like more complicated than a soap opera. So, long story short, the boys are taking the sheep, and they've gone from Hebron out to Shechem. And that's when I had this eerie thought. It's like, oh my gosh, they're taking the sheep, and it makes perfect sense now too. They're taking the sheep to find better pasture, and they're going to the ghost town, which is a ghost town because they killed everybody and took all the women slaves. And of course all the pastures are going to be ripe with green grass because there's no one there. There's no one there there's no one there. So there's no sheep to eat anything. So isn't that kind of eerie? Isn't that kind of scary? Can you imagine? So I posted a post on Facebook, and I kind of coined a new phrase, which is basically a saying, as it could be if anybody said it but me, which is that, and I'm paraphrasing, to pasture one's flocks in the fallow fields of our slain enemies, or something like that. Anyway, I put it in quotation marks, quoting myself. So now the boys are off, Jacob's sons are off with the sheep in Shechem, and Joseph, for some reason, has stayed behind, and Jacob's getting a little concerned about everybody, so he sends Joseph off to go check on the brothers and bring back word. So he says, go off to Shechem, find out how the brothers are doing, and come back and let me know if everything's okay. Well, off he goes. So Jacob's on his way, wearing his coat of many colors, and he's off from Hebron to Shechem. And when he arrives in Shechem, he gets near Shechem, somewhere along the way, he stops where he thinks that the brothers are, and they're not there. But he sees a man, and he asks the man asks, where are you headed? What are you looking for? And Joseph responds, I'm looking for my brothers who were pasturing their sheep. And the man says, oh yeah, they've moved on. I heard them say that they went to Shechem. That's where it comes in. I heard them say that they were... No, it wasn't Shechem. It was something else. Anyway, they're in Shechem. They went to Shechem, and then they moved on to someplace else. That's right. And the man tells him. So Joseph gets, back on his ass or whatever, and, I don't mean his butt, but his donkey, and he's off on his way to catch up with his brothers. And finally he catches up with them. And they see him coming, and here he comes. I'm picturing Joseph on his on his donkey or whatever, riding side saddle perhaps, and he's got his long coat of many colors, and the brothers spot him from a distance. Oh gosh, here comes Joseph, he's that old tattletale, Dad's favorite. Remember, these aren't their full brothers. These are the brothers, these are the sons of Bilhah and that other Zur, whatever the heck, that other slave girl. They're his half-brothers, so their sentiments aren't quite attached. Now Benjamin's not there because Benjamin's probably only about 7 years old, so he's certainly back with Bilhah, who is his adopted mom now that his mother's dead. So they see him coming. Here he comes. Here comes that guy, that troublemaker, Dad's favorite, with his coat of many colors. Oh, and I forgot to tell you something. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot on a major important part. Before all this happens, before they go, the boys leave and go away. Remember, rewind all the way back to the beginning. Just after we learned that he's a tattletale, we also learned that he has the nerve to report his dreams to his brother and his family. He's clearly not very smart. He has two dreams. The first dream, he is, he and his brothers are, doing whatever, they do with, the harvest. I'm thinking maybe it's wheat or something like that. And they've got these sheaves, wheat sheaves, the long stalks that the grass comes in, that the wheat grows in. I'm not doing a very good job of describing it. And after you get the grain out, you then take those sheaves and you bind them up into a bundle, and it makes like a little bundle with it's tied up, and you can then stack those and use those for whatever purpose you need. In Japan, we used to use the rice sheaves for all kinds of stuff in the old days. They would make sandals and clothing and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, they're binding. He and his brother in the dream are binding up the sheaves, and suddenly Joseph's sheaf stands up. Remember, it's a bundle of sticks, and it's kind of stick-like things, and it stands up, stalks. And then all of the brother sheaves stand up too, and the brother sheaves bow down to Joseph's sheaf. I mean, a clear sign of subservience to Joseph. And Joseph tells his brothers about this, and the brothers are like, "What? So you mean to tell us that you think we're going to bow down to you?" I mean, that wasn't very smart. They didn't like him already. He was a tattletale, and he's Dad's favorite, and he's got his pretty coat. So what's worse, he has another dream. And in this dream, he tells it to his dad and everybody, his dad, his mom, his brothers, anybody that'll listen. He says, "I dreamed of the sun and the moon and 11 stars, and they all acquiesced to me." Or however they did that. I don't know, did the stars bow or something? But anyway, he made it clear that that was the case. And symbolically, of course, the 11 stars are the 11 brothers. The sun and the moon are, the sun is clearly Jacob, and the moon is his mother, probably, Sarah, who's dead. Or if it's not Sarah, it's Bilhah, his adopted mother, now that Sarah's dead. Now, if it is Sarah, that's interesting, because Sarah's dead. That indicates a much bigger picture. And he's clearly saying that not only in the first dream, not only will my brothers bow down to me, but in the second dream, my whole family will bow down to me. And if it's Sarah who is dead, that means even the ancestors. I'm going to be the king. I'm going to be the ruler of this whole family, and all that we ever were, and all that we ever will be, likely too. Now that really infuriates everybody. It even gets Jacob mad. Jacob's like, "What? You're trying to say that your mother and I will bow down to you like that?" And they leave it at that. Now let's fast forward to the point where the brothers have been sent, and they spy Jacob coming on his donkey, riding side saddle in his pretty coat of many colors. Here's the guy that's the tattletale. Here's the guy that Dad loves. Here's the guy that's not smart enough to keep his mouth shut and instead tells everybody about his dreams, that he's going to rule not only his brothers but his entire family. They're clearly not very happy with this guy, and they say, why don't we do him in? Here we're way out here, far away from Hebron. No one's going to know any better. Let's kill him. And as they approach, they change their mind all of a sudden. And I think it's Reuben who says, Reuben steps in and says, "Let's not kill him. We don't want the blood on our hands." And Reuben actually has a bigger plan. Reuben's plan is that he's going to save his brother and then return him to his father. And he says, "Let's not kill him. Instead, hey, look over there. These cisterns that dug in the ground. Why don't we toss him in one of those?" Now the cisterns were dug. Remember, this is kind of like an arid climate. I did a little research, and the cisterns were dug in the ground in these arid lands. Cistern, of course, just being a big old tank for holding water, and it's a depression in the ground where the runoff from the land will run into the cistern and fill it up during the rainy season, and then they can use it as a well, an open well, to then water the sheep. And this was a common practice. And in that area, the land is actually limestone, which is somewhat porous. So the cisterns would be dug and then sealed or lined with clay to prevent the water from seeping into the ground. And then during the rainy season, you could get up quite a bit of water in the rainy season. It's kind of like the desert out here. When it rains, it really pours. It would fill up, and you could then water the sheep. It said that a half-acre land a cistern could support 500 sheep for a year with the runoff. So these were very effective. This happened to be the dry season, because they find a dry well, a dry cistern, and they toss Joseph in. Now it's too scrambly. You can't, too steep a sides and probably smooth, and he can't gain purchase in the side to get up. And it's probably kind of, if not muddy down there, but there's probably silt and stuff, so it's probably kind of dirty on the bottom, so it's not a very pleasant thing. And they leave him down there. And then the brothers move us a little ways off and decide to make their dinner. And they're going to leave him down there. And the plan is that they're going to depart, following the sheep. And Reuben's idea is that he's going to come back later, get Joseph out, and take him back to Dad. And who knows what would happen. But as they're sitting there having dinner, they see a caravan of, I think it's Midianites, coming down the road. And these are Midianites who have myrrh and a few other things, and they're headed down to Egypt to trade those things with the Egyptians. Now keep in mind that these Midianites are also of the line of Abraham. So these are, in fact, the cousins of Jacob's sons. So these are like cousins 2 or 3 times removed. So they probably don't know each other, but they probably speak the same language, they have the same customs, they may even have the same names in their family heritage. They all probably, I've heard the stories of Abraham and Isaac and the like. So these are their people, but they say, hey, as they see the caravan approaching, they say, hey, someone says, I have a good idea. Why don't we, instead of just leaving Joseph in the pit to die, in which we'll have blood on our hands, our brother's blood, why don't we haul him out of there and sell him to the Midianites? I think it's the Midianites. They all agree, hey, that's a great idea. So I don't think that Reuben's around. Reuben's off doing something because he's not party to this. And they haul him out and they stop the caravan and say, yo, hey guys, hey cousin, yeah. I have, well, here comes a police officer behind me and I'm waving my hands around in the air. There he goes. It says Canaan, Santa Ana Police, and not a highway patrol. And not that I think there's any law against waving your hands around in the air. And I'm doing a quite nice speed. So anyway, they say, hey, cousin, get on down from that camel. Because they're on camels, he says. We got a deal for you here. We got this guy right here. Yeah, you mean the guy with the flashy dresser? Yeah, get that coat off. They demand that, and then they remember, take the coat off. They take off Joseph's coat. Yeah, we want to sell you this guy, but we're going to keep the coat. Does the coat come with him? Does the boat come with the house? So they say, we're going to sell it to him, and they come to they agree upon a price of 20 shekels of silver, which it turns out, scholarship reveals, is in fact the going rate for the mid-second millennium BC. You can find the records in Assyria and Egypt that 20 shekels of silver is about the going rate. And we know that from back in Abraham's day, that 10 shekels of silver translates to a year's labor. So you're basically paying 2 years' labor. So if you imagine, in modern day, if we were selling people in the average, I'm just throwing it out there, the average annual salary for a worker is $40,000. The going rate would be about $80,000 to buy a person. Now, so I mean, does that mean that these merchants, who they're already vulnerable, wandering on the roads with all their goods and their camels, are they also carrying around, $80,000, the equivalent of $80,000? I guess 20 shekels of silver ain't that much. You could probably carry that around your waist, right? Ooh, is that an accident over there on the left? Oh, I gotta sneeze. It looks like an accident right there. The police have everything stopped. Wow. So they make the deal is struck. The 20 shekels pass hands, and Joseph goes into the hands of the Midianites, who are off to Egypt. Now, I guess the boys move on, and Reuben returns from wherever the heck he was and comes to the well or the cistern to get Joseph out, and lo, Joseph's not there. And he's really distraught. He's like, oh no, where's Joseph? And the boys go back to Hebron to their dad. And on the way they take a lamb or something like that, and they kill it. And they take the blood and smear the blood all over the coat of many colors. And they get back to Hebron, and they go to their father, and with a plaintive voice they say, Father, acting all innocent, we found this. And they show him the coat. And he says, could this possibly be our brother Joseph's, coat of ostentation? I mean, many colors. And Joseph Israel, Jacob, recognizes it right away, and oh my gosh, that is it, that's definitely Joseph's coat, oh my gosh, and he tears his clothes and takes off his clothes, and he puts on sackcloth, whatever the heck that is. I mean, picking burlap maybe? He says that, oh, he's so distraught. He says, I'm going to mourn now to the end of my days until I can join my beloved Joseph in the ground. And his dad's really upset, and the boys must be feeling a little remorse now, like, gee, we didn't know he'd take it so that hard, right? Anyway, the deed is done, and Joseph is off to Egypt, and the chapter ends with Joseph arriving in Egypt with the Midianites, or whoever they are, and they sell Joseph then to an Egyptian. Can't quite remember his name, but he's going to figure heavily because he's an advisor or counselor to Pharaoh, and that's where the chapter ends. Now I'm wondering, clearly they didn't get a very good deal, and these are Jews after all. if they paid the going rate for Joseph, how much profit could they possibly make in Egypt? Wouldn't it have been better if they bought him for 15 shekels and then sold him for 20? Probably. I don't know. Am I reading too much into it? Thinking too much? Perhaps. Well, that's it. So there's the end of Joseph's dream. So the moral of this story is, keep your fashion sense on the lowdown. Keep your damn dreams of grandeur to yourself, and maybe you won't get thrown in a well and sold into slavery. Okay, take care, everybody. See you tomorrow for more Freeway Bible study. Bye bye. Look, the cops around? No, okay.